Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. We've got a really good Figured Out Baseball podcast for you today. We're being joined by Jake Boss. Jake is the head coach at Michigan State in the Big Ten. Very, very lucky to have him on the program today. Let me give you a quick background on Coach Boss before we get into questions with him. So I think it's important to know where guys come from and kind of some things that they've done in their life, their baseball careers before we start talking. He is a Lansing, Michigan native. He played at Alma College, graduated from Alma in 1993. Started his coaching career in the high school ranks, was the high school coach in 1994 and 1995. In 1996 and 1997, he was an assistant coach at Iowa Central Community College, a really good and storied junior college program in Iowa. Both of the seasons he was there, the team went to the Junior College World Series. In 1998 through 2004, he was an assistant coach at Eastern Michigan. They won back-to-back MAC West championships in 02 and 03, went to an NCAA regional in 2003. While at Eastern Michigan, Coach Boss also earned his master's degree in 2000. Then from 2005 through 2007, he was the recruiting coordinator at Michigan. While at Michigan, the team made it to 3 straight regionals all 3 years he was there, and they won 40-plus games all 3 years that he was there. The 2007 Michigan team went to an NCAA Super Regional for the first time in Michigan history. He became the head coach at Eastern Michigan for the 2008 season, back to where he was an assistant for quite a long time. That 1 year he was there, the team won the regular season MAC West. They won the conference tournament and went on to an NCAA Regional, and he was named the Conference Coach of the Year in 2008. He was then named the head coach at Michigan State in July of that year, July 2008. At Michigan State, including the very abbreviated 2020 season, he has won a total of 342 games for the Spartans. The most in any, the previous 11 full seasons was the most wins in any 11-year span in Michigan State history. 5 of the 10 winningest seasons in MSU history have come with Coach Boss as the head coach. A couple other highlights. In 2011, the team won the Big Ten regular season championship. That was the first Big Ten championship for Michigan State since 1979. In 2012, they went to an NCAA regional for the first time also since 1979. In his tenure at MSU, the Spartans have seen 34 draft picks. They've had 42 all-conference players, 123 academic all-Big Ten players, and they also, for 3 straight years, the team has earned the ABCA Team Academic Excellence Award. Coach Boss, really appreciate you being on the podcast today. I'm excited to get into this with you.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff, and I'm excited as well. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. So I'd like to start with something that stands out from the bio, and for you, you've spent, pretty much your whole career in Michigan, almost all your whole career in Michigan. Spent a little bit of time outside of it, but I know you're from the area. What is it about, I guess, the opportunities you've had? How have you gotten to a point, I guess, where you've got the opportunities to stay there and haven't really had a pull to go elsewhere? A lot of coaches will try to go, maybe to find some warmer weather. What is it for you that's kept you around home?
Well, that's just it, Jeff. I mean, this is home, and I've never really felt the pull to, pursue anything in any type of warm weather state. I love the 4 seasons. From a weather perspective, I think, sometimes in the north in baseball, you can get a little bit, it can get tough in the spring, when it's cold. But at the same time, I think we kind of recruit to that, and there's a certain type of kid I think that's used to getting ready to play a season in the cold, and it's just something that I've always known, and my parents are still alive and well, and it's just we're very close. I played for my dad in high school. I coached against my dad. I had the opportunity to coach with my dad at Eastern Michigan, and then my dad coached for me. He was our volunteer assistant for 4 years. That's been an unbelievable blessing to me and my family. But when growing up here in East Lansing, I was always a Michigan State fan. We would come to football games, basketball games, baseball games, and we're always big Spartan fans. And when I got into the college coaching ranks, this was kind of the dream job for me. And I thought, how cool would it be to to actually be a part of an athletic department like Michigan State after, really kind of watching it from the sidelines as a fan growing up and for most of my life. And for the last 12 years now, I've been able to do that. And just, I pinch myself almost every day going into the office. I can't believe I'm the head baseball coach at Michigan State.
I appreciate hearing that. I like speaking with guys and just like to hear that there are guys at your level who still feel that way and who, appreciate the places that they are and don't grow too big, I guess. Some guys, and plenty of these guys, I'm sure, but you see guys all the time in this profession that put on a new uniform and all of a sudden they forget where they came from. I've legitimately had people that, as there were two volunteers sitting next to each other at camps and having fun and we're friends, and then they put on a bigger uniform with a bigger name, and then you see them out at an event and it's like, you got to, you're pulling teeth to get them to say hello to you, and that kind of stuff I don't understand. So your perspective is a breath of fresh air, I'm sure, for a lot of coaches out there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Jeff. I spent a lot of time early in my career, looking for the next job or being worried about, maybe the next job or where my career is headed. And, I pursued the job at Michigan as an assistant and for a good friend of mine working for Rich Maloney, who's, like I said, a friend, but also a mentor in my life. And, I pursued that job pretty hard and was fortunate and blessed to get it. But during my time there, I had a chance to sit down with Bo Schembechler, the former football coach at the University of Michigan. And, you got to understand, growing up as a Michigan State fan, I thought Bo Schembechler was one of the most hated human beings on the planet as far as I was concerned. I didn't like Michigan football. I didn't like Bo. I didn't like any of those guys. But, I had an opportunity to sit down with him, because he was a legend in college football. And we had an unbelievable conversation. We talked for over an hour. And I'll never forget, he told me, he kind of asked me what my career aspirations were. And I started to lay it all out for him. And he stopped me dead in my tracks. And he said, listen, all you need to worry about is do as good a job as you can where you're at, and the rest is going to take care of itself. And I never forgot that, and I never looked for another job after that day. And I just concentrated on what I was doing and figured that, God had a plan for me, and just kind of trusted that, that would take care of itself, and it certainly has. And I think it's been an awfully satisfying and rewarding career up until this point.
I know that when I coached, I was, applying for all kinds of jobs every summer, and we get frustrated when you don't get a call that you feel like you should get, especially when somebody gets hired that you feel like maybe you are more qualified than, and maybe, you kind of ask yourself all these questions of why you're not getting more attention. But when you really trust, put a little trust into it and just kind of let things fall where naturally they might, a lot of good things happen. Not that you shouldn't do anything, but like you said, if your focus is to do the best job that you can where your feet are, then a lot of good things happen. You got to coach, you've grown up, I guess you grew up in a family where your dad was a coach pretty much probably your whole life. And you guys actually got to coach together a little bit. But what was it like to grow up with your dad as a coach and being the son of a coach? How much did that impact your career as a player, as a coach, as a person? What effect did that have on you, Coach?
Yeah, it had a huge impact on me, and I think it was awesome. My dad coached football, he coached baseball, he coached wrestling. He's in the Michigan High School Hall of Fame as a baseball coach, and certainly that's where he spent most of his time. But I remember, one of my first memories is being probably 3 years old, 4 years old with my little uniform on and running around in the dugout, his players, throwing me around like a rag doll. And, these are 17, 18-year-old high school kids, but to me, those guys were Superman. They were big, they were fast, they were strong, and, so much older than me. And those guys were my heroes, growing up. And then, when he coached football, I will still maintain there is nothing like a football locker room about 5 minutes before kickoff. I thought that was the coolest thing that I had ever gotten to experience. And, I have a son who's 18 years old now, just finished his senior season of football. And, to be on that side of it, to watch that, to watch him go through that, I think is just the coolest thing. And those experiences really kind of shaped me. But my dad was always my hero, and to get a chance to play for him was pretty special, but it wasn't easy. I probably made it a lot more difficult because I wasn't a very good player. It could have been a lot easier had I been better, to be quite honest with you. But, the best thing my dad did for me my junior year of high school was he sat me down and put me on the bench for a while, and because I wasn't playing well. And that really shaped me in a lot of different ways, not only as a player, but as a coach. I think I have a little bit of, maybe empathy for the guys that are struggling, maybe a little bit, guys that aren't playing. I know where they're coming from. That doesn't necessarily mean they deserve a chance, to play. I mean, I think you earn your chances in practice and things of that nature. And, but at the same time, I think I can help those guys understand what it means to be a good teammate, and that it's about us and that it's not about me. And, so I think those things really shape who I am as a coach now today. But, I also think that, being a very average player, I had to try to figure a lot of things out. I had to figure out how to, if I wasn't going to be able to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, I had to figure out how to foul it off at least, and maybe sit on a breaking ball or figure out a way to get on base. And so I think all those experiences really kind of shaped me. And but my dad was and still is a hard worker. And we went in every all summer long to work on the field. He worked hard at fundraising. He took an inner city high school baseball program and turned it into one of the best programs in the state of Michigan. And he was taking his spring trips to Puerto Rico with his team in Arizona, and these kids were given an unbelievable experience. He took a team of high school kids to Russia to play. So I saw what it took to and what kind of work ethic it took to really give these guys an opportunity. And the most important thing that probably I learned from my dad was the relationship piece of coaching. And it can get exhausting sometimes going to a Michigan State football game, basketball game with my dad, because he likes to walk around during halftime, and you can't go more than 10 feet without somebody stopping him and saying, hey, or coming up to me and saying, hey, I had your dad in gym class in 1972, or, I played for your dad in 1980, or, something like that. It's just, it's really something neat for me to see. And, I get a chance to puff my chest out maybe a little bit because I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of where I came from, and it's a pretty cool thing to see. I think it puts things in perspective for sure.
Very cool. So as a guy who played for Dad and then did play in college, you're a 4-year letter winner. I don't know a lot of stats besides that, but I mean, obviously you had some we had some success in college. One of the issues I think that has come up in today's game because of the nature of travel baseball, kind of what it's blown into big business and things of that nature. Parents sometimes get too involved, can be a little bit overbearing, overwhelming for their kid. They can, parents can be an issue in the recruiting process. How did your dad handle all that? Obviously you said that he had some tough love for you at times, but how did he handle things in the recruiting process? How did he handle you, just day to day as a player? With having your kid on your team is not always an easy thing, but and I'm asking this just to kind of give parents that are listening to this an idea of maybe how maybe a good way to approach things with their son. That the son has a chance to play in college and has a chance to do some good things, but again, sometimes as a parent, it's easy to be too much in your kid's business or too overwhelming in that process. So how did your dad handle things, do you think might be a good insight for a parent listening to this, maybe how they can handle things with their own kids?
Well, I think my dad put me in a position, to take advantage maybe of an opportunity or two, and I think that as a parent, again, I have a daughter who plays volleyball and softball at the Division III level. My son is a senior in high school. He's going to play Division III baseball as well. I think as a parent, my job's to encourage my kids. My job's to love on my kids. My job's to be honest with my kids. That can be the toughest one, because nobody likes to see their kid fail. And I think a lot of times, it's easy to try to blame somebody else. It's the coach's fault, or it's the umpire's fault, or this and that. But I think you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with your kids, and then I think just provide them with the tools to take advantage of opportunities. And I think that's what my dad did. I remember the day that my college coach came to watch us play, and he had asked about several different guys, and I think at the end my dad said, "Oh, by the way, my son is a first baseman here and isn't going anywhere yet, and just see what you think." And I had a good day that day, and he was my college coach was interested. Came back a couple more times to watch me play. A couple times I knew he was coming. A couple times I didn't. But what my dad had instilled in us, and what we try to do with our guys here at Michigan State, with the pro guys, is we want to play the game the same every day. You have to play the game like somebody's going to see you play for the very first time, and we want to leave a lasting impression on whoever that person is. And I think my dad instilled that in me, and we in turn kind of tell our guys, like I said, the same thing. But I don't, I think it's important for parents to understand that I don't coach the parents. I coach the son, and during the recruiting process, I want to talk to the player. And I have great relationships. Don't get me wrong, I have great relationships with all of our parents. But they don't play for me, and I encourage them, your job is to love and support your son. Your job's not to coach him, because that's my job. And, I think sometimes that there's a bit of a disconnect there, and maybe, rightfully so. I think we all love our kids, but at the same time, you've trusted me as a coach to do just that. And, I don't try to be these guys' father, because that's not my role. I will help in the growing process for sure. And if I need to step in, if I'm asked to step in, I'm not going to step on anybody's toes, but, I could be sometimes a father figure for some of these guys, but I'm not their dad. And so, I think the same is true on the other end of it. You trusted me to coach your son up. There's a lot of different ways to get something accomplished, but we need to be consistent in our message. And then, the last thing I think that my dad did for me, I went through a time in my junior year of college. I had played pretty much every game my freshman and my sophomore years in college. My junior year came around, and there was a freshman that was playing pretty well, and I was not playing well, and I found myself, back on the bench. And I called to my dad to kind of unload on him maybe a little bit emotionally. I was pretty frustrated, and I knew he had known my coach for a while. I said, "Why don't you call him and find out what's going on?" And that was the wrong thing to say to my dad, because he absolutely let me have it at that point, and said, "Listen, if you have a problem, you need to go be a man and grow up and take care of this yourself and fight your own battles," essentially. And he says, if you don't know why you're not playing, you need to go in and have that conversation. And that was a tough conversation, but I did, and I think I was a better player for it. I was a better, I was a better man, I think, for it, and I learned a lot from that. And I didn't find myself back in the lineup because I went in to go talk to the coach. But what I did do was, or what it did for me though, is I was very clear. It was very clear at that point what I needed to do, and it got me away from pouting about not playing to get back to working hard. And I worked my tail off and found my way back in the lineup. And had my dad made that phone call for me, I wouldn't have learned a thing. And so he really did me a favor, by that. Playing for him, like I said, was tough. He was hard on me, because he wanted it to be very clear that I wasn't, being shown any favoritism whatsoever. And that made it tough. That made the drive from school home tough sometimes, and certainly it made it tough on my mom, because we got stuck in the middle of it a lot of times. But again, looking back, it was the best thing that he could have done for me. I appreciate that very much.
Let's stay on that track for a little while. When I stopped coaching in college, I tried to coach high school. I coached a fall, a spring, and a fall before I got out of that for figured out baseball purposes. Things started getting busy here, and I've got another job. I've got kids, and I felt like I couldn't, I wasn't going to be able to give everything I had to everything. So anyway, but the little bit I coached in high school, that was one of the messages that I tried to convey. And maybe college is a little different in this respect, but maybe it's not. But just try to talk to guys about trying to figure out what a role could be if you're not a starter, and figure out what positive roles you could still have on your team, and how you can still be a good teammate, how you can still help your team win, even though you're not one of the 9 guys that's penciled in on that particular day. What are some conversations that you have with players now at Michigan State, assuming that you do have these conversations with guys they're disappointed they're not starting, maybe they think they should be starting, but they still have to find some way to contribute in some way to be a part of the team. And like you kind of said, instead of pouting, there are other things that you can do. What are some conversations you have right now with kids that are in that position that, again, might be able to help someone who's listening to this, whether it's a coach or whether it's a parent of a player who's in that situation? What are the conversations you have right now, Coach Boss?
Well, sure. I think, and that's a tough conversation. I've got 35 guys on my team, and only 9 of them can play at a time, and so that's, and every one of these guys, not only here, but, most places, has grown up being the best kid on their team and been the all-conference player and is not used to, kind of sitting on the sidelines and watching. And, that's a tough deal for a lot of guys, and understandably so. We talk a lot about, building into others. We talk a lot about, helping make somebody else better. And I think when you're able to do that, when you're able to take that focus and help somebody else get better, I think you in turn, get better as well. I think it's interesting when, we go through a number of practices in the fall and in the winter and things like that, and go through some instruction with our guys and technique-wise and things like that. Some of them grasp it pretty quickly. Some of them, it takes a little bit longer. But, we have camps for young kids, and when our players work the camps, all of a sudden they're in the coaching role. And to listen to them teach the game kind of how we've taught it to them, at the end of the day, to a man, most of these guys would say, it's starting to make a little bit more sense now that I'm on the other side of it and I'm working with somebody trying to help them get better. And so I think when you pour into somebody else, not only does it make them better, but I think it makes you better as well. The other part of it too, again, as cliche as it is, it's about us. It's about the team. And, if you're not, if you're not on the field and you don't stay engaged in what's going on the field during the ball game, you're not going to be ready if you get an opportunity. Because you're one check swing away from, a guy breaking his wrist and somebody else getting an opportunity. You're one pitch away, you're one swing away, you're one stolen base away, whatever it is from, if you're on the bench, you're one of those things away from being put in the ball game. And if you're not ready, it's going to be tough for you to stay in the ball game. It's going to be tough for me to put you into the next one. So, whether that be looking for tendencies, based on what the other pitcher's doing to us, looking for paying attention to whether a runner touches first base or not, paying attention to, where their defense is shifting for our hitter and how the opposing pitcher pitches to us based on what the defense is showing us. Keeping a pitching chart, keeping a hitting chart. I mean, you name it. There are a million different ways to stay involved. And if you could stay involved now as a coach, I understand and I can appreciate the fact that mentally you're ready, which means if you get an opportunity to pinch run, to pinch hit, to come into the game and relief on the mound, you're going to be ready to do that. And then at that point, your physical ability will take over. But if you're not ready, you're not going to be successful.
I'm going to ask this question because I think it's the perspective of a lot of parents out there. So just say that that this player he's been working his butt off on your team for the last couple of years. He does everything he's asked. He does a lot more. He goes to hit on his own. He lifts on his own. But he's just not to the point. He does not physically talented enough to be a starter on the team. But I think the perspective of a lot of parents, particularly at the high school level, is that because my son works a lot and works hard and he never misses practice and he's got a good attitude and we fundraise for the team and this and that deserves an opportunity to play. So I'm gonna ask you that question, and I'm sure it's a little bit different at the major Division I level. But I think that we have a lot of high school coaches that subscribe to the site and listen to these podcasts, and I'm sure they deal with that all the time. What's the tough conversation that you have with parents there, or players if you have a player or a parent talking to you? How do you address that? How do you handle that? What's the right way to go about handling that for someone who's in that position that's getting that question?
Well, yeah, and I think it's, first of all, I think, and I do the same thing with our people. I mean, I acknowledge the fact that they are absolutely correct. Their son does work hard. They do everything, that we've asked them to do. But I would follow that up with, that's the expectation. That's the expectation that's been set in our program. So while, yeah, absolutely, your son does work hard, I've got 34 other guys that work hard as well. And the fact that he's not on the field is not an indicator of what I think of him as a person. It's not necessarily an indicator of what I think of him as a player. But my job as a coach is to put the 9 guys out there on the field that give us the best chance to win. And that can be difficult when it's not your son or your daughter. And again, I've got kids of my own. In my mind, my kids should hit third and every day, and my kids should be in the starting lineup every day. And the reality of it is, that's not always the case. I'm not at every practice. I only see the ball game. I only see what the kind of the end result. But I'm not there every day to watch my kids practice, and that's when decisions are being made. And my job is to trust that the coach is putting the people out there that he thinks are going to help him win the game. I mean, I don't know one coach that will put players out there thinking that this guy is not going to help us win the game. That's not what we do. And those guys don't coach very long. And so, there is a set of trust that is involved. But again, I would say, working hard, again, that's the expectation. And we've got a bunch of guys that do work hard, and the guys that don't work hard don't end up playing, either. I think you have to be very careful, I guess, in how you define success. And I think that's part of that can be a very difficult thing. But I think, you go back to what John Wooden said about success, and if I give him my best effort, he essentially, just to paraphrase, I guess, that's how John Wooden defined, success. And I tell my kids the same thing, through a lot of their ups and downs, if you've given everything that you have in that practice, in that game, whatever it is, up until, for that entire season, if you've given everything that you have, then you can be very satisfied with the results, with the outcome. Whether you played or not, that's not under your control. You don't make the lineup card out, that's for me to do. But, again, I think the level of expectation is hard work, and we've got a lot of guys that do work extremely hard. So at that point, ability, really the ability kind of takes over, and some guys are just quite honestly more talented than some others. Some guys, are better at certain skills maybe than others, and I think understanding that role is what's going to be most important. The other thing too, that can be difficult, especially for young kids, is to understand that if you're a freshman or a sophomore, you've got 4 and 3 years to do something like this. And when you're 18 and 19 years old, playing against guys that are 21 and 22, maybe even 23 years old, it's a big difference. There's a big difference physically. There's a big difference mentally. And, again, I think it kind of goes back to, really what Bo Schembechler told me when we were talking about career. Do as good a job as you can that day, and the rest is going to take care of itself. And, we talk to our guys, about that a lot. And, when you do get your opportunity, you need to be ready. Because if you're not ready, you're not going to get many more opportunities.
I like this track that we're on, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to stay on it for a little bit, just about talking about some issues that parents and kids have, and maybe some arguments and some things that tough decisions you've got to make as a head coach. What are your thoughts on whether or not players need to be treated equally as far as things like punishments go? For example, I'm going to throw out a hypothetical situation. Spring season rolls around and one of your best players does something dumb, and gets himself in some trouble, and it's similar to something a player last year did, but the player last year was, on your 35-man roster might have been number 33 or 34 on your depth chart, and this year it's one of your best players that you really rely on. This is maybe a tough question, and hopefully it's okay that we're getting into this, but I'd like to try to ask some tougher questions sometimes to help people understand and help people, kind of relate to things in their own situation. How do you handle that type of situation among your players? Like, are all players created equal when it comes to that? Or do the better players get a little more leeway because they're more valuable to the team, whereas maybe the guy who's 33rd or 34th on your depth chart, he's got to do everything he can to kind of hang on and to have a spot on the team. Just curious to know your thoughts on that and how you handle that type of a situation.
Well, I would say a little bit of both, Jeff. I think, number one, yes, I do agree that all players are, I guess, quote, created equal. Again, there are certain expectations of guys in our program that need to be met. And if they're not met, then there are some consequences, With that being said, I'm very clear with our players that each situation is different. Each situation is its own unique situation. And as an example, kids are required, and expected to go to class for us at Michigan State. If you're not going to class, then you're not going to. Then I'm going to, if academics aren't important to you, then I'm going to take some baseball away from you and make sure it becomes more important to you. So, in the past, we've had, say, two guys that haven't gone to class. The first kid, we called him in and sat him down and said, what's the deal? Why aren't you going to class? Well, I've got an 8 o'clock class in the morning. It's tough for me to get up. I said, well, that's not good enough, and so, there'll be some consequences for that. The second kid, comes in, why aren't you going to class? Well, Coach, in one measure, and this is unfortunately, this was a true story for us. My mom found out she just got cancer, and I've been really having a hard time dealing with that. And I've got some, biology classes that, we're kind of talking about that right now, and it's really tough for me, and I need some, it's just really tough for me to handle right now. Two completely different situations, and if I took it at the surface, yeah, you're not going to class. Right, but at the same time, I'm not going to punish the young man because his mom has cancer, and so we found ways to work around that. We found ways to, to get him some help, some people to talk to, understanding still that okay, now we got to get back to class. But at the same time, for me to suspend that young man, I think would be a mistake, and I think that would be a problem. I think that would have caused him to go into a tailspin, to be quite honest with you, because his support group, his support network, is the team. It's a close-knit group, and he needs to be around those guys for that support. And so two completely, two situations that look very similar on the surface, but when you dig down, two completely different situations. And I think that's how we deal with things a lot at Michigan State. Each situation is different. If something does happen where, we have to discipline a kid, I will also make sure that the entire team knows in certain cases, This is, call it what you want. Call it a warning shot over the bow. Call it, strike one. Call it whatever. But, if one young man makes a mistake this week and somebody else makes the same mistake next week, while they both did the same thing, I would take the second one a little bit more seriously because, you haven't learned anything. I think we can all learn something from situations, and we're very clear. We're very clear with our team with how we deal with things. We're very open and honest about situations when we have disciplinary situations. We're open and honest with what happened, and this is why. This is the measures that are taking place, and this is why. And at the same time, if we as a group don't learn from this situation, then the next time it happens, the punishment could be a little bit more severe. And, I think at our level, guys are pretty good about, learning from others' mistakes as well, and making sure that things like that don't happen a second time.
How much does your staff look into the character of players? And I'd like as honest of an answer as you can. Obviously, everybody pays attention to, somewhat of the character, and you want kids to hear the right message. But to be, really, really upfront and honest with people that are listening to this, how much does character play a part in the recruiting, so that you can maybe try to limit some of the issues that you might have with kids on campus? And is that a sliding scale based on talent?
Sometimes. Sometimes. Now, certainly, it's the first thing that we do, is look into a kid's character, and understanding that the phone calls that we make are going to be, the coach is going to tell me, I know what the answer is before I ask the question. The coach is going to tell me he's the best kid that's ever played for him. He's a great kid. He works hard, and on and on and on. But I'll tell you, what we do a lot of is we get on social media and we try to do our due diligence on social media, because I do think social media is a window into who somebody is as a person. If we find some things that are questionable on social media, that throws up a lot of red flags. If we'll go and watch kids play really incognito. I'll go and sit in my car and watch a game, or I'll go without any Michigan State gear on and stand on the left field line all by myself and watch a game, because I want to see how this kid plays when he doesn't think anybody's there to see him. So character is a big, piece of what we do. That said, there are some guys that I would say questionable characters, probably pushing it. But we've taken, I understand also that guys aren't perfect, and you try to, I guess, differentiate between maybe some of the innocent mistakes that kids would make on social media because just from a lack of maturity or lack of experience, to really serious, issues that you think might cause, some harm and some friction in your program. And so we try to differentiate between the two. We certainly have taken some kids that maybe we thought had a red flag or two. And those kids have worked out great in our program, and kids that have done a really nice job in our program, and we're very close to, still to this day. And so, again, I think that's different for each kid. If a kid has a lot of different red flags and we think that it's going to be a problem for us in our program, regardless how good that young man might be, we're not going to recruit that because I think there are certain things that I think can really tear a program down, regardless of athletic ability, and that I don't need to have in my program. I think when we recruit at Michigan State, we talk about making a commitment to these guys for 4 and 5 years, and I don't want to be in a situation where I may have to tell a kid that that's not going to be the case. You're going to be done after a year or two, and we've never had to kick a kid off our team. Nobody's perfect. We've had to discipline some guys, but for the most part, we've gotten good kids that work hard and are proud to be Spartans.
Last question, Coach Boston, then I'm going to let you go. Besides physical tools, Maybe I'll start there. If we can make this a two-part question, what are some of your best, your favorite physical tools to recruit? And then I'll go to a part two. But obviously there are a lot of tools to recruit, but just whether pitching or hitting, what do you get most excited about? Maybe a couple tools in particular that maybe are some of your favorite tools to recruit in a guy. Like you see a guy with this tool, and you're more likely to recruit him, because of that one tool, or maybe a couple tools that he's got. Do you have anything in particular that kind of stands out to you when you're recruiting a guy?
Well, I tell you, Jeff, I think, we've had some teams like this in the past, and I like big, strong, physical guys. I like walking off the bus looking like a football team, to be quite honest with you. We've had some guys that, that have been some pretty impressive specimens in the uniform. Now, that doesn't mean we can all play. That type of size and strength doesn't necessarily always translate over onto the field. But, at the same time, I think when you have big, strong guys at the plate, you're one swing away from a 2 or a 3 run home run and getting right back into the ball game. But we do like to have some balance. I think, I do like to have guys that can really run as well, both at the top and the bottom of the order, as everybody does. And typically those guys aren't the 6'6", 240-pound guys. And so, we try to keep a bit of a balance there. But I think athleticism, for me and for most guys at the Division I level, most guys at the college level, I think athleticism is most important. Because if you have a good athlete, not only can you move him around to different positions and he can be a lot of different things for a lot of different people, but I think there's always a chance that he's going to continue to get better and better and better, and by the time he's a junior or senior, you could have something that's pretty special.
How about anything off the field, maybe through conversations, or just maybe it's something you see in pregame with teammates or anything like that, any particular attributes that wouldn't maybe necessarily be thought of as tools that you really like, that, hey, like when you realize a kid has this about him, that makes you even more excited to recruit him?
Yeah, I think a maturity and a confidence about him, I think, are two pretty important things. And I will tell you, you can find that out, I think, pretty quickly when you get a chance to meet a kid and have a kid in on a visit. I mean, first impressions, mean an awful lot, and all those cliches are true. But, when we shake a kid's hand, if we get a firm handshake and a look in the eye, I think that's a great start. I think that kind of tells you that, the kid is a confident kid. He's got some maturity to him. And then, if he's able to hold a conversation with you, if he's able to talk, about his other teammates and his coaches and in a positive way, and it's one of those things where there's a big difference, I think, between confidence and arrogance. And I think arrogance is something that, that happens when you try to elevate yourself by putting somebody else down. And that I don't want any part of, to be quite honest with you. I would love to have a confident kid who is confident in his ability, but also confident that he can get the best out of his teammates. And leadership goes into that as well. But I think those things are paramount to having a good program. And I understand you can't have 35 leaders. I mean, leaders need people to follow them. And, I think that's a big part of it as well. And so to have 35 leaders, you're going to have a bunch of strong-willed, strong personality guys that, is going to be, can be a challenge, I think, sometimes when you have too many of them. But, again, I think you have to have guys that are willing to pour in somebody else and understand that, maybe the, our purpose is one group and one unit to be successful.
I appreciate that very much. Coach Boss, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here with us today. This is Jake Boss. Everybody's the head coach for the Michigan State baseball team, a longtime Michigan guy, several different colleges in Michigan, a great track record, and a lot of really great insight today. We're very blessed to have you on the podcast. I just want to thank you again for your time. I know that this is we're in the shutdown phase where everybody's kind of staying at home and we don't know when we're going to see baseball again. So it's great to connect with some guys and at least be able to talk about baseball, and for people listening to this, just to hear from people like you. So sincerely appreciate the time that you gave us today.
Well, my pleasure, Jeff, and to you and everybody else, please stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll get through this trying time, and there will be baseball again at some point. But enjoy the time to slow down, enjoy your families, and this too shall pass.
Very well said. Thanks so much, and best of luck. And hope you and your family stay safe as well. And hopefully we're watching Michigan State baseball next spring.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.